Imagine a machine that cannot be destroyed. 200 millimeters of frontal armor. Not a single gun in the world is capable of penetrating it. It was not a tank, but a mobile fortress costing a fortune, created by the genius of Ferdinand Porsche. 89 of these monsters went on the hunt to turn the tide of the war in 24 hours. But why, just 2 weeks later, did these steel giants turn into mass graves for their crews without receiving a single penetration? How did a simple wooden box costing 15 rubles defeat a wonder weapon worth 300,000 marks? And what fatal mistake by the designers forced the elite of the Wehrmacht to burn alive inside their own machines, unable to open the hatch? In this video, we will break down the story of the Third Reich's most grandiose technical failure. You will learn how gold was exchanged for sawdust, and why perfect German engineering lost to harsh Russian reality. Watch until the end. The truth about the demise of the Ferdinands is more terrifying than any myth. July 1943, the Kursk sector. The earth trembles. This is not a metaphor or a literary turn of phrase. It is the physical consequence of the operation of 178 Maybach engines roaring at idle in the tree line. 89 of the newest Ferdinand self-propelled artillery guns are drawn up in battle formations. A heavy, low-frequency hum presses on the eardrums, vibrates in the diaphragm, and resonates in the soles of boots. The air is saturated with the heavy smell of superheated oil, synthetic gasoline, and heated metal. Here, on the northern face of the Kursk bulge, the technical fist of the Wehrmacht is concentrated, intended to smash through the Soviet defenses in 24 hours. This is not simply a concentration of armored vehicles. It is an exhibition of the achievements of German engineering thought, taken to the point of absurdity. Each machine is 70 tons of Krupp alloy steel. It is the weight of a heavy tank, packed into a hull that the ground can barely support. A driver mechanic of the 653rd Heavy Panzer Jäger Battalion wipes a viewing port with a rag. His hands are oily, but his movements are calm and confident. He knows he is sitting inside the most protected object on the entire Eastern Front. Frontal armor, 200 millimeters, 20 centimeters of cemented steel. Not a single Soviet cannon, not a single anti-tank rifle, not a single tank shell of 76mm caliber is capable of penetrating this plate, even when fired at point-blank range. This is not theory. This is the result of firing range tests. Shells will simply bounce off the frontal projection, leaving only scratches on the gray paint. "Gunther, are you finished with the rollers?" the vehicle commander shouts, trying to be heard over the noise of the motors. "Yes, sir, Herr Lieutenant. The suspension is normal." "This behemoth is ready to crush." "Remember, we do not crush. We burn them out." From 2 kilometers away, the Russians won't even understand what killed them. The crews are calm. There is no fear in their eyes, only the cold arrogance of technocrats. They believe in physics. They know the tactical and technical characteristics of their machine by heart, like a prayer. The PaK 43/2 gun, caliber 88 millimeters, barrel length 71 calibers. The muzzle velocity of the armor-piercing shell is 1,000 meters per second. At a distance of 2 kilometers, this shell stitches through any armor existing in nature. The Russians have nothing that could withstand a hit. The T-34 tank is a cardboard target for the Ferdinand, which can be destroyed without even entering the engagement zone of its gun. The engineering genius of Ferdinand Porsche created not a tank, but a mobile fort. A revolutionary electric transmission, as it seemed to the designers, is applied here. 2 internal combustion engines rotate 2 generators, which supply current to 2 electric traction motors. No rigid mechanical connection, no drive shafts breaking under load. Smooth movement, ease of controlling the huge mass. This is the triumph of technology over brute matter. The cost of one such self-propelled gun exceeds 300,000 Reichsmarks. For comparison, the production of one T-34 tank costs the Soviet economy approximately 135,000 rubles, which, in terms of labor and materials, is many times cheaper. But here, in the pre-dawn twilight of July 5th, economics fades into the background. Only killing power matters. Crew commanders check the optics of their sights. German glass, coated optics, allowing one to see a target thousands of meters away. They feel like surgeons about to perform a complex but necessary operation to remove the Bolshevik infection. "Heard the Ivans have new anti-tank guns?" asks the loader, placing a heavy unitary round into the rack. "Forget it," sneers the gunner, not looking up from the panorama. "Let them drag out mortars for all I care." 200 millimeters, Kurt. 200. It's like shooting peas at a bank vault. We will go through their positions like a hot knife through butter. The main thing is that the tracks handle this mud. In these words lies the quintessence of the German doctrine of 1943. A bet on the Wunderwaffe, the wonder weapon. The belief that one technologically perfect machine is worth 10 simple ones. That the quality of steel is more important than the quantity of barrels. The crews of the Ferdinands look at the world through the narrow slits of triplexes, and this world seems simple and understandable to them. Ahead lies the Russian steppe. In it is the primitive equipment of the enemy, and around them is indestructible armor. The 654th Battalion, standing on the right flank, has already warmed up its engines to operating temperature. Exhaust gases spread like a blue fog over the grass. The giants are ready to tear away from their spots. 70 tons of weight for each machine. The total weight of the strike group exceeds 6,000 tons. This is colossal pressure on the ground. Each square centimeter of the track presses on the Russian earth with a force exceeding 1 kilogram. Porsche's engineers assured that the wide tracks would compensate for the mass, that cross-country ability would be sufficient. No one thinks about what happens if this complex mechanism stops. Evacuating a 70-ton machine from the battlefield is a logistical nightmare, requiring 5 towing vehicles working in tandem. But who would think about evacuation when you are invulnerable? Thoughts of breakdowns are driven away. The Führer ordered the start of Operation Citadel, and the Ferdinands are its main trump card. Battalion Commander Major Nowak gives the order over the radio. The headphones explode with short, chopped phrases. "Attention all crews, engines at full power, distance 50 meters. Target, height 274. Open fire upon readiness. Let's show them what German steel is. Forward." Hatches clang shut. Heavy steel plates cut the men off from the outside world. Inside it becomes quiet. Only the rhythmic hum of the electric motors reminds them of the hidden power. The needles of voltmeters and ammeters on the driver mechanic's instrument panels jump into the green sectors. The current is flowing. Huge drive sprockets turn the track belts with a characteristic grinding sound. The tracks bite into the dry summer soil, tearing out chunks of turf. The armada moves out. 70 tons of metal begin to accelerate. The earth is no longer just trembling. It is groaning. This movement is like an avalanche, slow, inevitable, deadly. The horizon, obscured by haze, is visible in the triplexes. There, a few kilometers away, waits the enemy. The crews are confident. The Russians are in a panic. The sight of these steel monsters, which shells do not affect, should break the will to resist even before the first shot. They do not know one thing. The tank maps lying on the commander's knees are exactly 24 hours out of date. They do not know that confidence in their armor has played a cruel joke on them. They look at the horizon, expecting a duel with tanks. But death will not arrive on a flat trajectory. Death is already waiting for them, not ahead, but below. Under a layer of black soil, wormwood roots, and harmless field grass, the illusion of invulnerability is absolute. 200 millimeters of steel seem a guarantee of life, but the laws of war are cruel. The more complex the system, the easier it is to disable. The Ferdinand is a masterpiece, created for an ideal war in a vacuum. But it is about to face reality, where engineering calculation shatters against the brute force of explosives. Engines roar, devouring liters of fuel. Rollers grind the step dust. Mere minutes remain until the first contact. The mechanism is launched. There is no way back. The steel fist of the Wehrmacht is raised to strike, not noticing that it is swung not at the adversary, but at its own demise. While on the other side of the horizon, 89 steel giants warm up their transmissions, here, in the zone of Soviet defense, reigns an unnatural, ringing silence. But this is not a peaceful silence. It is the calm before an execution. The depth of the Central Front's defense is not 10, not 20, but more than 300 kilometers, of which 60 is a continuous zone of engineering obstacles. These are not just trenches. This is an industrial assembly line of death, designed with cold mathematical calculation. If the German strategy is a blow with an armored fist, then the Soviet answer is a viscous, layered web created to absorb the kinetic energy of the blow. There is no room for improvisation here. Every bush, every ravine, and every path is accounted for in fire maps and mine logs. The earth is dug up, turned inside out, and stuffed with explosives like a layered pie. Major Komarov of the engineering troops walks along a line marked on staff maps with a red dotted line. Beneath his feet is black soil, thick and rich, an ideal environment for camouflage. His men, the sappers, have been working for 3 days without sleep. Their faces are gray with dust and fatigue, their hands rubbed raw and bloody by shovel handles and wooden crates. There is no place for pompous speeches here. A sapper's work is hard physical labor multiplied by deadly risk. It is digging work, where the price of a mistake is instantaneous detonation. Increase the density. Komarov's voice sounds dry, like the crack of a branch. 2,000 per kilometer is not enough here. The Germans will come in a wedge. Lay them in a checkerboard pattern. Pitch, 1.5 meters. Comrade Major, there isn't enough metal, replies a sergeant, standing waist-deep in the grass. The TM-41 is running out. Use the wooden ones, TMDB. They don't care what they explode on. The main thing is the charge. Thousands of mines lie in the earth. TMDB, an anti-tank mine in a wooden hull. Primitive, cheap, terrible. Kilograms of pressed TNT in a box made of unplaned boards. This is its main tactical advantage. It is invisible to the Wehrmacht's magnetic mine detectors. A German sapper can walk a meter away from it with the most advanced device and hear no signal. Death here is analog, devoid of electronics, and therefore undetectable. The sappers work quickly, with mechanical precision. Movements are honed to automatism. Remove a layer of turf, dig a hole, place the mine, screw in the MV5 fuse, cock the spring of the firing mechanism, return the turf to its place, camouflage with grass, smooth the earth so no fresh mound remains. A minute later, harmless clover grows again on the site of the deadly trap. "Careful with the fuse, Petrov," hisses the lieutenant, watching a young soldier. "The actuation force is 200 kilograms. A tank won't notice, but it will blow your leg off." "Yes, sir," the soldier answers briefly. His fingers tremble, but the pin enters the groove. Click. The mine is armed. This is not just mining. This is the creation of battlefield architecture.
Soviet engineers do not just scatter explosives, they channel the enemy's movement. Minefields are positioned to leave the Germans narrow passages free of mines. These passages seem like salvation, a convenient route for heavy equipment.
In reality, they are fire bags. As soon as the column moves into such a corridor, anti-tank guns will strike it from the flanks, and an attempt to turn off the road will lead straight into high-density minefields. 3,000 mines per 1 kilometer of front. An unprecedented concentration. Statistics say that for every advancing German tank or self-propelled gun, several dozen kilograms of TNT are prepared here. This is a war of resources. On one side, expensive alloyed alloys, precise optics, and years of crew training. On the other, cheap TNT, wood, and the simplest pressure-action fuses. The economics of war is inexorable. To destroy the running gear of a Ferdinand costing millions, a wooden box costing 15 rubles is sufficient. Major Komarov checks the camouflage. He looks at the field through the eyes of a German driver-mechanic. What will he see through the triplex? A flat field, tall grass hiding irregularities. Convenient ground for maneuvering a 70-ton machine. The ideal trap. The Germans look for tank-dangerous directions where there are anti-tank ditches and hedgehogs, but here the threat is hidden right under their noses. "Third platoon, finish up!" the command rings out over the field. "Withdrawal by the markers, step in step. Anyone who stumbles, we'll write home that he went missing." The men gather their tools. The smell of damp earth and tobacco hangs in the air. The sappers know. In a few hours, hell will begin here. But their part of the work is done. They have turned these fields into a giant anvil upon which the German hammer will soon fall. And this hammer must shatter. Along the roads, camouflaged in tree lines, stand stacks of crates. Reserve. If the Germans break through the first line, mobile obstacle detachment sappers will throw new minefields right in front of the tracks of the advancing forces. This is an active tactic. Mining not in advance, but during the battle, under fire, cutting off maneuver paths. Komarov looks at his watch. 4 in the morning. The sun is just starting to gild the tops of the birches. The silence becomes tangible. Somewhere out there, over the horizon, the Maybachs are roaring. An armada is moving here, confident in its invulnerability. 89 crews believe that armor will save them. They do not know that their fate has already been decided, not in an artillery duel, but here, in the mud, by the hands of tired men with shovels. The entire calculation is built on psychology. A German tanker is used to fearing a cannon. He looks for the flash of a shot. He maneuvers, presenting his front. But a mine does not shoot. It has no unmasking signs until the moment of the explosion. It strikes the weakest spot, the track and the belly. The armor is thinner there, and the running gear is the Achilles heel of any, even the heaviest tank. "Well, God be with us," the old sergeant major says quietly, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Let's meet the guests. Cut the chatter," the major snaps. "Check the detonation circuits of the controlled landmines." The field before them seems empty, but under the layer of turf, thousands of springs are cocked. Thousands of strikers are frozen a millimeter from the detonator caps. A hidden threat waits for a pressure of 200 kilograms. The earth is ready to accept the weight of German pride. The trap snapped shut before the victim even entered it. The physics of materials is ready to teach the Reich's economy a lesson that will cost very dearly. July 5th. The clocks show 0530. The sun rises over the horizon, illuminating the target, the 1st of May State Farm. 89 steel boxes crawl across the field. Speed, 20 kilometers per hour. This is not an attack. This is a parade of force. The crews of the 653rd Battalion feel like invulnerable gods of war. Russian trenches are in the sights. The distance is closing. The engines are working at the limit, devouring fuel, but the machines move confidently. The ground holds. Holds for now. The commander of the lead vehicle with tactical number 501 looks into the periscope. Ahead is clear. No pillboxes, no anti-tank ditches. The Russians seem to have vanished. It is suspicious, but an order is an order. Only forward. He commands the driver to add gas. 70 tons gather inertia. Suddenly the world turns upside down. It is not the whistle of a shell. It is not a blow to the forehead, for which they are ready. It is a dull, monstrous kick from below, as if the earth opened up and struck with a hammer right into the belly. A roar of such force that blood flows from ears. The multi-ton machine jumps like a toy. The crew inside is thrown against steel walls. For a second, the light goes out. When vision returns, the driver-mechanic sees the instrument needles falling to zero. The engines roar, but the machine does not move. It spins in place.
"What was that?"
A scream in the intercom.
"Have we been hit?" "Track! Right track!" yells the radio operator, looking through the side slit. Outside, a picture of technical catastrophe unfolds. The explosion of a TMD-B anti-tank mine has torn the tracks apart. Massive steel links, each weighing tens of kilograms, shattered like shards of glass. The drive sprocket, continuing to rotate, winds the remnants of the belt around itself, turning the running gear into a mess of twisted metal. The Ferdinand turns sideways by inertia. And at that moment, it ceases to be a formidable assault gun. It turns into a 70-ton pile of useless iron. 501, I am 502. I see a rupture under the roller. You are standing still, the airwaves crackle. I am immobilized. Sector of fire lost.
But this is only the beginning. To the left and right, fountains of black earth rise up. One after another, the steel giants run into an invisible wall. It is not a wall of concrete, it is a wall of explosives. The minefield here has a monstrous density. Komarov's sappers did not spare the TNT. A second machine tries to bypass the disabled comrade. The mechanic jerks the lever sharply, turning left. The maneuver of a weight of 70 tons creates colossal pressure on the soil. And this is fatal. A second mine triggers under the left idler. The explosion tears off the roller with the flesh, breaks the torsion bar. The suspension, designed for huge loads, does not withstand a point impact from below. Porsche's unique system, complex, expensive, innovative, is destroyed by a wooden crate with TNT. In 20 minutes of battle, the battalion loses 9 machines. 9 Ferdinands freeze in the field like monuments to their own helplessness. The frontal armor, those same 200 millimeters the designers were so proud of, is absolutely intact. There isn't a scratch on it. Russian shells didn't even touch it. But the machines are dead. Panic begins inside the fighting compartments. This is not fear of an enemy one can see. It is terror before something that cannot be repelled. A German tanker knows how to angle the tank, how to hide vulnerable spots. But a mine has no ballistics. It doesn't care about the thickness of the armor on your forehead. It strikes the unprotected belly. 505 blew up. It's burning, someone screams on the air. Crew bailing out! Back! Everyone back! It's a minefield! The voice of the company commander breaks into a squeal, but there is nowhere to retreat. Reversing in a minefield is suicide. Mechanics try to turn the heavy self-propelled guns, and new explosions thunder under the tracks. Those who try to back up run over mines they missed while moving forward. The trap has snapped shut. And this is where the main miscalculation of German engineering manifests itself. The Ferdinand has no bow machine gun. It is a tank destroyer created for duels at long distances. It is blind in close combat. As soon as the machine loses mobility, it becomes defenseless before infantry. Soviet soldiers do not go into a frontal attack. They work in tank hunter groups. They see that the beasts are immobilized. Artillery begins to work over the area, cutting off the German infantry from the armored vehicles. The Ferdinands are left alone in the middle of the field. Inside the disabled machine 501, there's a smell of burning and fear. The electric transmission is damaged by the concussion. Generators spark. The crew of 6 is locked in a steel box. "Open hatches! Prepare for defense!" commands the lieutenant. He understands that now they are not the crew of an advancing machine. They are the garrison of a small, very expensive, and absolutely useless pillbox. The barrel of the gun points to the sky because the machine has tipped into a crater. It is impossible to aim at a target. The mighty 88mm cannon, capable of piercing any tank, can do nothing against an infantryman crawling with a bottle of incendiary mixture in the dead zone. "Hans, look in the periscope! Left! Infantry!" "I can't reach them. The angle doesn't allow it." "Where is our machine gun?" "We don't have a machine gun, idiot. Shoot from your pistol through the port." Through the slits, they see neighboring machines burning. Those whose ammunition or fuel detonated turn into torches. 70 tons of steel become red hot. If the crew does not manage to get out, they burn alive. Those who get out fall under the dagger fire of Soviet snipers and machine gunners. 20 minutes of combat canceled out years of development. The concept of an invulnerable battering ram shattered against the reality of mine warfare. Engineers in Berlin calculated the strength of armor plates, but forgot to calculate the strength of nerves and the vulnerability of the running gear. On the field near the 1st of May State Farm stands a graveyard of the Third Reich's hopes. 9 giants. The cost of each is like a small factory. All of them are disabled by means that cost pennies. The airwaves are filled with cries for help and curses. "We need tractors. We can't move. Tractors won't get through. There are mines. Get out on your own." It is a dead end, technical and tactical. The Ferdinand was created as a dominant force, as a predator. But having lost a track, it became prey. Without movement, its powerful armor is just the walls of a crypt. Its long gun is a useless pipe. Soviet mines did what cannons could not. They deprived the enemy of maneuver. They turned the maneuver war of motors into a positional slaughter where the Germans have no advantage. Machine 501 shudders from a close explosion of a high-explosive shell. Soviet artillery begins bracketing the stationary targets. Now it is a shooting gallery. Just range shooting at standing targets. The lieutenant looks at the pressure gauges. Oil pressure is at 0. The transmission is dead. "Kill the engines," he says quietly. "Save the batteries. We're going to be sitting here for a long time." The noise of the engines dies down. A terrible silence sets in, broken only by the impacts of shells outside. The crew sits in semi-darkness. They feel betrayed. Betrayed by their command, which sent them into minefields without reconnaissance. Betrayed by designers who didn't give them a machine gun. Betrayed by their faith in technology. The illusion of superiority dissipated along with the smoke from the first explosion. Only naked physics remains. 70 tons of dead weight in the middle of the Russian steppe. Headquarters of the 9th Field Army of the Wehrmacht, July 12th. There is no roar of explosions or smell of burnt flesh here. Here it smells of ersatz coffee, expensive tobacco, and the printer's ink of fresh reports. The silence of the offices is deceptive. It is here, over maps of a scale of 1 to 50,000, that the defeat is recorded. Not tactical, but systemic. Colonel General Walter Model stands by the table. He is called Hitler's fireman for his ability to stabilize hopeless situations. But now he is looking at documents that defy the logic of conventional war. Before him lies a report on the 656th Panzer Jaeger Regiment. The numbers are dry, black on white, but they scream of catastrophe. Report losses on the Ferdinands. Model's voice is dull, devoid of intonation. He is not asking, he is demanding confirmation of the impossible. 33 machines, irrevocably lost or requiring factory repair, Herr Colonel General. That is 37% of the regiment's roster. The operations officer enunciates the words, trying not to look the commander in the eye. Model picks up a pencil. He begins to count. Not people, not crews. He counts Reichsmarks. For him, war is primarily a counting of resources. One Ferdinand is 300,000 Reichsmarks. It is hundreds of tons of scarce copper in the windings of electric generators. It is alloy additives, molybdenum and nickel, of which the Reich has almost none left. It is thousands of man-hours of highly skilled workers in Austria. Cause of losses? The pencil in the general's hand freezes. Artillery of 152mm caliber? Direct hits by aerial bombs? Negative. The main reason is minefields, and subsequent finishing off by infantry. The pencil breaks with a dry crack. In this sound is the entire absurdity of the situation. German industry created a technological masterpiece, a machine invulnerable to shells. The designers foresaw everything: armor thickness, angles of inclination, optics. They created the perfect tank killer. But they did not foresee the economics of war. Model walks to the map. He sees not a front line, but a financial report. 33 destroyed Ferdinands is almost 10 million Reichsmarks turned into scrap metal in 12 days. How did the Russians respond? With wooden boxes of TNT. The cost price of one TMD-B mine is about 15 rubles. In terms of German currency, pitiable pennies. This is an asymmetric exchange that is impossible to win. To disable the incredibly complex transmission of a Ferdinand, assembled by the best engineers of Vienna, 5 kilograms of explosives laid in the ground by an illiterate peasant is sufficient. The efficiency coefficient tends to infinity in favor of the Russians. This is not war. This is wastefulness, Model pronounces, addressing the void. We are trading gold for sawdust. A heavy silence hangs in the headquarters. The officers understand. The doctrine of qualitative superiority is bursting at the seams. The idea that one supertank is worth 10 ordinary ones works only on the proving ground. In the real mud of the Kursk bulge, one supertank is stopped by one cheap mine. And then, immobilized, it is burned by bottles of gasoline that cost even less. Herr General, repair companies report the impossibility of evacuation, the adjutant continues. The weight of the machines does not allow the use of standard tractors. A coupling of 5 18-ton half-track vehicles is required. On mined terrain, this is impossible. We are forced to blow up damaged equipment with our own hands. Model nods. This is another expense item in his grim accounting. A logistical dead end. The Ferdinand is so heavy that its breakdown is equivalent to destruction. The Russians don't even need to blow it up completely. It is enough to break a track, and the German army will do the rest itself. The crew will place a charge in the gun breech and leave, leaving the enemy a pile of metal weighing 70 tons. This is the collapse of the business plan of Operation Citadel. The bet was placed on breaking through defenses due to the invulnerability of new equipment. But invulnerability turned out to be a fiction. The armor holds the blow, but the running gear does not. And a tank without movement is not an asset, it is a liability. It is dead capital. Prepare a report for Berlin. Model throws away the broken pencil. Write the truth. The wonder weapon is effective only until the first mine. We are losing elite units not in battle, but in engineering traps. The resource of the running gear does not correspond to the conditions of the Eastern Front. The officer writes quickly. The pen scratches on the paper. And add, the general's voice becomes icy, that if the Russians produce mines at the same speed with which we lose tanks, then by autumn we will have nothing to fight on. In this office, far from the front line, the realization of strategic defeat occurs. Germany invested millions in creating single examples of absolute weapons. The Soviet Union invested resources in the mass production of primitive countermeasures. On the scales of history, cheap, crude mass death outweighed the unique, elitist, and expensive. Model looks out the window. He understands that the battle is lost, not because the soldiers lacked courage, but because the economy of the Third Reich did not withstand the collision with the Soviet mining industry. Each lost machine is a hole in the budget that cannot be patched. Porsche factories need months to build a new Ferdinand. Soviet factories need minutes to knock together a new mine. Dismissed, the general throws out. The adjutant disappears behind the door. Model is left alone with the numbers. 33 machines. 37%. This is not just loss statistics. It is a verdict on technical adventurism. The belief that engineering genius can defeat the laws of large numbers turned out to be a mistake. And for this mistake, right now in the steppes near Ponyri, German tankers are paying with their lives, trapped in their insanely expensive and useless machines. Meanwhile, while the German staff counts losses, 1,000 kilometers away, the flywheel of Soviet industry is just beginning to gain momentum. Moscow's answer to German quality will be simple and terrible in its mass scale. Stalinist accounting works on different principles. Moscow, the Kremlin, the office of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief. No cannonade is heard here, but it is here that the rhythm with which the heart of the war will beat is determined. Joseph Stalin holds in his hands a report from the commander of the Central Front, Konstantin Rokossovsky. The paper is thick, the typewritten text is crisp, but the main thing in this document is not the font, but the percentages. The leader underlines one figure with a red pencil. 80%. Exactly that much of the newest German armored equipment, including the heavy Ferdinand self-propelled guns, was put out of action not in direct tank duels, but on minefields. Silence stands in the office, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock. Stalin puts down the pencil and looks at the People's Commissar of Munitions, Boris Vanyakov. The look is heavy, assessing. It is the look of the CEO of a huge corporation who has just found a critical vulnerability in a competitor's strategy. Comrade Vanyakov. Stalin's voice is calm, but there is steel in it. Do you see these numbers? The Germans bet on custom-made items. They brought us a menagerie that costs millions, and we are breaking their backs with simple wooden boxes. Yes, sir, Comrade Stalin. The effectiveness of engineering obstacles exceeded expectations, the Commissar replies. He stands at attention, ready to write. Stalin gets up and walks to the map. If the enemy is afraid of mines, we must give him mines. We must flood the front with them, so that a German soldier is afraid to take a step even to the toilet. How many are we producing now? 1.5 million units a month of all types, Comrade Stalin. Not enough. Need 3 million. A month. Consider this a decision of the State Defense Committee. Deadline: yesterday. This is not a request. This is an order for the restructuring of entire industries. At this moment in Moscow, the mechanism of total war is launched. where quantity transitions into quality of destruction. The headquarters makes a strategic choice. Instead of a symmetrical response, an attempt to create its own supertank here and now, the Soviet Union responds asymmetrically, with an industrial tsunami of cheap explosives. Factories in the Urals, Siberia, and the Volga region receive new quotas. Enterprise directors wipe cold sweat reading telegrams from Moscow. Increase output of TMDB hulls by 2 times. Switch workshops number 5 and 6 to 24-hour mode. Shipment of echelons via green corridor. Deep rear. Factory number 15. The workshop resembles an anthill. There is no high engineering culture in the German sense here. There is no sterile cleanliness. Here stands a thick smell of TNT, wood sawdust, and unwashed bodies. People work in 3 shifts. A shift lasts 12 hours, but often workers do not go home, but sleep right by the machines on crates of finished products. Women and teenagers stand at the conveyor. Men are at the front or in heavy metallurgical processing. Here, on the assembly of death, nimble fingers are needed, not brute strength. "Masha, faster!" screams the section master, drowning out the noise of the transporter. "The plan is burning! The front is waiting!" "I can't keep up, Ivan Kuzmich. The fuses are coming with defects. The threading is tight," answers a girl whose arms are stained yellow up to the elbow from toxic explosives. "Twist as best you can. If it doesn't fit, take a hammer. It's a mine, not a watch. It only needs to work once." In this dialogue is the entire essence of the Soviet production philosophy of wartime. A German engineer will polish a part to the micron, achieving perfect operation of the mechanism. A Soviet master knows the lifespan of a mine is 1 press. It doesn't need to be beautiful. It doesn't need to be durable. It just needs to explode. Rough processing, tolerances in millimeters, cheap materials, all these are not bugs, but features. This allows products to be produced in runs of millions. Carpentry shops that yesterday made furniture are now driving out thousands of wooden hulls. Chemical plants brew TNT and ammonal by the ton. This is a real assembly line of death. While in Germany, Ferdinand Porsche awaits a delivery of scarce copper for 1 electric motor, in the Soviet Union, 10,000 mines roll off the assembly line. The economy of war enters its most cruel phase. The battle is going on not only at the Kursk bulge, it is going on in the workshops. "How many crates per shift?" asks the party organizer of the factory. 5,000, wheezes the shop chief. His eyes are red from insomnia. "Need 6. The Germans brought new equipment. The guys write that the armor is thick. Shells don't take it. Only hitting under the belly works. Come on, push." And they push. Production grows exponentially. 3 million mines a month. That is 100,000 mines a day. If you lay them in a single line, you can girdle the front several times. This is the answer of quantity to quality. The German Ferdinand is the pinnacle of individual craftsmanship, a unique product requiring maintenance, spare parts, fuel. The Soviet mine is faceless soldier that asks for no food, does not sleep, and patiently waits for its hour. Railway junctions are clogged with trains. Echelons with inconspicuous gray boxes go west. In documents, this passes as special cargo. But every wagon is thousands of potentially torn-off rollers and tracks. Stalin in the Kremlin looks at the reports again. The production graph crawls upward. "Good," he says, lighting his pipe. "Let their Wunderwaffe choke on our wood." The strategy is approved, finally. Mine every suspicious meter. Create such a density of barriers that the very earth under the Germans' feet becomes an enemy. This is not the heroic feat of a loner with a grenade. This is industrially organized destruction, put on stream. At the factories, no one thinks about high strategy. They think about the production quota. "Another cart! Load it!" commands the foreman. Wooden crates with black marking TMD-B are stacked in piles. Soon they will be in the black soil of the Orel region. Soon they will meet tracks cast at Krupp factories. And in this dispute, the one who has more will win. The flywheel is spun up. The Soviet Union turns its territory into an insurmountable obstacle course. The German bet on blitzkrieg and technical superiority crashes not against the genius of commanders, but against the ruthless statistics of mass production. 3 million deaths a month. No army in the world can pay such a price. Even an army armed with Ferdinands. Berlin, Ministry of Armaments and War Production. Here, thousands of kilometers from the burning steppe, the war looks different. This is not mud and blood, but the silence of carpeted runners, the rustle of drawing paper, and the clicking of arithmometer keys. Reich Minister Albert Speer sits at a wide desk made of stained oak. Before him are not operational maps, but economic summaries. And these summaries kill faith in victory faster than any reports from the front. In the office, there is a smell of expensive tobacco and ozone from working fans. Speer picks up a slide rule. His brain, the brain of an architect and manager, tries to find justification for the costs. But numbers are stubborn things. They do not yield to propaganda. On the table lies a report on the operation of heavy tank destroyers Ferdinand. Speer looks at the column Resource Consumption. "This is madness," he says quietly. Opposite sits a colonel from the Army Ordnance Office. His face is impenetrable, but fatigue reads in his eyes. "Herr Reichsminister, the effectiveness of the gun is confirmed. Engagement distance..." "Leave the lyrics for the newspapers," Speer interrupts. "Look at this figure." He unfolds a sheet. The cost of one Russian T-34 tank destroyed by a Ferdinand crew costs the Treasury 6 times more than if this tank were destroyed by a Panther. 6 times, Colonel. We are shooting gold bars at wooden targets. But Dr. Porsche claims that the losses are due to incorrect tactical application. The machines were thrown onto minefields without infantry support. Dr. Porsche is a brilliant designer who lives in an ideal world. Speer's voice becomes hard. He created a machine for laboratory conditions. But war happens in the mud. In this office, a verdict is being signed not just for a specific model of armored vehicle. The collapse of an entire engineering philosophy is happening here. Ferdinand Porsche, the Führer's favorite, the man who gave the world the Beetle, created a technological monster. His ambitions required innovation for the sake of innovation. Electric transmission? Brilliant. 2 engines? Amazing. But in conditions of total war and resource scarcity, this brilliance becomes criminal. Speer gets up and walks to the window. Berlin lives its life, but the shadow of catastrophe already hangs over the city. "Copper," he says, looking at the street. "In every Ferdinand, there are hundreds of kilograms of scarce copper for electric motors. We are taking bells down from churches. We are collecting kitchen utensils to wind coils for these generators. And then these generators burn out because the cooling system is not designed for Russian dust. This is not war. This is sabotage paid for from the state budget." The dialogue in the office shifts to the plane of cold calculation. "What shall we do with the remaining chassis?" asks the colonel. "The Nibelungenwerke factory still has stock." "No new Ferdinands," Speer cuts off. "Close the program, convert the remaining machines, or send them for melting. We cannot afford the luxury of producing equipment that breaks under its own weight. This is the end of an era. An era when a designer was an artist, a creator whose will was higher than reality. Porsche believed that technology solves everything. He convinced Hitler that 90 machines, invulnerable to shells, would turn the tide of the war. He was mistaken. War is won not by the one with thicker armor, but by the one whose tank is easier to repair in the field with a sledgehammer. Speer returns to the table. He takes a red pen and puts a sweeping visa on the document. Tell Porsche that his experiments are finished. From this moment, there is one criterion: manufacturability and cheapness. If a tank cannot be assembled by low-skilled workers, we do not need this tank. Behind this bureaucratic procedure lies the personal tragedy of a great engineer. Ferdinand Porsche is removed from real influence. His brainchild, his pride, is recognized as a dead-end branch of evolution. The machine was killed not only by a Soviet mine, it was killed by the estimate. It was killed by logistics. It was killed by common sense. By the way, the colonel gathers the papers. From the front, they report that the crews have no machine guns. Russian infantry approaches point blank. Speer smiles bitterly. A machine worth 300,000 marks, defenseless before an infantryman with a grenade. That is the best monument to our stupidity. Porsche got so carried away fighting tanks that he forgot about people. In the corridors of the ministry, the news spreads quickly. The Tiger Porsche project, the base for the self-propelled gun, is finally buried. The bureaucratic machine of the Reich, grinding its gears, turns towards simplification. But time has already been lost. The resources spent on creating 90 steel colossi cannot be returned. Copper, steel, fuel, all this remained burning in the steppes near Kursk. Speer understands. This is the beginning of the end. If the German engineering school, the best in the world, begins to lose the competition of efficiency, it means the war is lost strategically. The Ferdinand became the symbol of this era. Bulky, complex, capricious, a titan with feet of clay. Next report, Speer commands. The door closes. The topic is closed. A bold period is placed in the history of technology, but for those who are sitting inside these machines on the Eastern Front right now, the bureaucratic decision changes nothing. They are still there. They still believe in their equipment, not knowing that in Berlin they have already been written off as an illiquid asset. Their lives now are just a line in the losses column. And this column continues to grow with every hour. And somewhere at the Kubinka proving ground near Moscow, Soviet engineers are already preparing to deliver their verdict on a captured specimen. And this verdict will sound not like an accounting report, but like a prosecutor's sentence. The meeting of two schools, the German architectural and the Soviet functional, is inevitable. And it will happen not on paper, but on armor. The scientific testing ground for armored vehicles in Kubinka. Here, far from the burning front, the air is clean and clear. But the tension here is no less than on the front line. Only the nature of this tension is different, intellectual. Before the hangar stands a trophy, a self-propelled gun with tactical number 501, captured practically intact. The crew abandoned it when the tracks got stuck in the sand and the engines overheated. Now this steel colossus is not a threat, but physical evidence, an object of research. A group of people in civilian suits and military uniforms without insignia walks around the machine. Among them, the figure of Alexander Morozov, the chief designer of the T-34 tank, stands out. He does not look at the Ferdinand with fear. He looks at it like a surgeon at a tumor, with professional interest and cold detachment. In his hands, there is no weapon, only a notebook and a slide rule. Morozov approaches the frontal plate. He runs his palm over the cemented surface. Cold metal. 200 millimeters, he says without turning around. plus the slope. This is not armor. This is a fortress wall. A shell of 76mm caliber leaves a dent 2 millimeters deep, comments the ballistics engineer standing nearby. To penetrate this, we need to drag up a naval gun. Morozov nods. He acknowledges the fact. The Germans created an impenetrable shield. But he is interested not in the shield, but in the price they paid for it. He walks around the machine, examining the running gear. 6 road wheels per side, twin bogies. The torsion bars have sagged under the monstrous weight. Even here, on the hard ground of the proving ground, the machine seems to grow into the earth. It wants to stop. Gravity, for it, is just as much an enemy as artillery. "Open the transmission compartment," commands the designer. Mechanics struggle to lift the heavy armor plate. The innards of the beast are revealed to the gaze. This is not a tank engine bay. This is a power station. 2 Siemens generators, a tangle of thick cables in rubber insulation, massive electric motors in the stern. The shine of copper. A complex system of relays and switches. Engineers lean over the hatch. A whistle of surprise is heard. "Look at this, Alexander Alexandrovich," one of the technologists points to the winding. "Electrical copper of the highest purity. There are hundreds of kilograms of it here." From this one machine, one could wire a whole block of residential houses. "Electric transmission," Morozov states dryly. "Beautiful, elegant, smooth ride, pivot turn, the peak of engineering thought." He pauses, and in this pause sounds the sentence, "But how do you repair this in the field?" The question hangs in the air. The Soviet design school professes the religion of simplicity. A tank must be repairable with a sledgehammer and a 32mm wrench, in the mud, in the rain, by the hands of yesterday's tractor driver. Here, a laboratory is needed. Qualified electricians are needed, dry bays are needed, scarce spare parts are needed. This is not a machine for war, Morozov closes the notebook. This is a monument to technical pride. They bet on abstract perfection, forgetting about reality. "Comrade Chief Designer, but it works," objects a young engineer. "On the proving ground, it showed excellent driving qualities." "On the proving ground," Morozov cuts off harshly. "But in battle? What happens if one relay burns out? The whole machine stops. 70 tons of dead weight. To evacuate such a carcass, 5 tractors are needed. And where do you get them in battle?" The dialogue turns into a dispute of 2 philosophies. German philosophy: create an ideal tool that surpasses all analogs in characteristics. Soviet philosophy: create a reliable tool that can be produced by the thousands and fixed on one's knee. Morozov knocks his knuckles on the side of the Ferdinand. The sound is dull, dense. "You know what I see?" he asks his colleagues. "I see a dead end. They hit the weight ceiling. You can't increase armor further. The bridges won't hold. You can't complicate the design. Industry won't handle it. This Ferdinand is their swan song." Engineers climb inside the casemate. Cramped conditions. Despite the huge external dimensions, inside the crew cannot turn around. The huge breech of the gun takes up half the volume. "I don't envy the loader here," grumbles the ballistician, trying to squeeze through to the site. The casing is long, heavy, and there is no room. Ergonomics sacrificed to protection. The Commission's verdict is cruel and unambiguous. In the report that will lay on Stalin's table, there will be no enthusiasm about German genius. There will be dry figures of labor intensity. The labor costs for the production of 1 Ferdinand SPG are equivalent to the production of 10 T-34 tanks. This is the mathematics of victory. Better to have 10 simple tanks, of which 3 will burn, but 7 will break through the defense, than one ideal tank that gets stuck in a ravine due to the failure of a penny capacitor. Complexity is the enemy, Morozov summarizes, descending from the armor to the ground. In war, the winner is the one whose equipment lives longer in conditions of no supply. This beast will die without service maintenance in a week. We don't need to copy this. We need to find ways to destroy this. The inspection is finished. The trophy remains standing on the concrete, majestic, powerful, and absolutely meaningless in its complexity. Soviet engineers go to the design bureau. They will not make their own Ferdinand. They will make the IS-2, a tank that will weigh 46 tons, have a gun larger than the German one, 122 millimeters, and which can be fixed in any forest. The clash of engineering schools ended with the complete victory of functionalism over perfectionism. The Ferdinand proved that one can create an invulnerable box, but one cannot force it to win a war. War is chaos, and complex systems do not survive in chaos. What survives is what is simpler, what is more reliable, what is cruder. Evening descends on the proving ground. The cooling metal of the German self-propelled gun crackles. This is the sound of defeat, embedded in the blueprints back at the design stage. Designer Porsche wanted to surprise the world with technology. Designer Morozov wanted to give the army a weapon. The difference in goals determined the result. The German Titan turned out to be a colossus with feet of clay, unable to survive the collision with Russian mud and the Russian logic of war. And while engineers write reports, the agony of those machines that still remain in the ranks begins at the front. Not an honorable retirement in a museum awaits them, but a long and painful death on the roads of retreat. July gives way to August, and the dusty steppe turns into a swamp soaked by rains. Operation Citadel has choked. The Wehrmacht begins to roll back to the west. For a tank division, retreat is a complex maneuver. For the 653rd and 654th battalions, it is logistical agony. The roads of the Orel region become a graveyard for machines that only yesterday were considered the crown of creation. The order to withdraw sounds like a sentence. Turning 70 tons in the mud is a task on the verge of the transmission's capabilities. Electric motors designed for peak loads do not withstand the march. The resource of the Ferdinand's running gear is the sprint distance of a battle, not the marathon of a retreat. Every 100 kilometers of travel requires replacement of rollers and maintenance of generators. But there is no time for maintenance. Soviet tanks are hanging on their tail. A column of heavy tank destroyers crawls toward a crossing over a small, nameless river. The bridge is wooden, on piles. It is designed for horse-drawn carts and Opel Blitz trucks. Maximum for a medium tank weighing 25 tons. At the entrance to the bridge stands a major of the engineering service. He waves his hands, crossing them over his head. "Halt! Back! The bridge won't hold! Find a ford!" "What ford, damn it?" leans out an Oberleutnant from the commander's cupola. "Depth is 2 meters." "I'll flood the generators. It's an electric machine, idiot. It doesn't know how to swim." The dialogue is short, filled with cursing and despair. There is no choice. Either risk it and go over the flimsy decking, or abandon the machine on the bank. The driver-mechanic engages low gear. 70 tons of metal slowly crawl onto the logs. The wood groans. This sound is louder than the work of the engines. The piles sink into the silt. The first machine passes, barely catching the railing with its tracks. The second follows. Too fast. Resonance. The crack of breaking beams sounds like a gunshot. The rear part of the self-propelled gun falls through. The gun barrel soars into the sky like the trunk of a dying elephant. The machine falls into the water, breaking the spine of the crossing and blocking the way for the others. This is the end of the route. For those who remained on the other bank, the trap has snapped shut. Along the road stand abandoned giants.
They have no battle damage. The armor is intact.
But they are dead. Fuel has run out. 2 Maybach engines consume liters of gasoline at a monstrous speed. For 100 kilometers of off-road travel, the Ferdinand drinks up to 1,000 liters of fuel. Fuel trucks are burning somewhere in the rear under strikes by IL-2 attack aircraft. The crew of machine number 602 stands around their steel home. The mechanic wipes his hands with a rag that is blacker than the earth under his feet. Transmission seized, his voice is empty. Bearing of the left electric motor disintegrated. I can't fix this in the field. Need a crane to remove the roof armor plate. Need a new rotor. We don't have a crane, Hans. We only have TNT blocks, the commander replies. This is the most terrible moment for a tanker. To kill your machine. Not in battle, not in the rage of combat, but coldly, methodically, with your own hands. The Ferdinand is a complex organism that requires a retinue.
It needs tractors, needs repair trucks, needs flat cars. When the infrastructure collapses, the king dies of hunger and disease. Evacuation of one damaged self-propelled gun requires a coupling of 5 18-ton tractors. 5 tractors for one monster. In conditions of panic retreat, it is impossible to assemble such a train. Tractors are needed for artillery, needed for infantry. No one will give 5 vehicles to save one, even if it is very expensive. The arithmetic of retreat is cruel. They save what can drive itself. Place the charge in the breech, the officer commands. The loader, a young guy who just a week ago proudly stroked the breech of the 88mm cannon, now with trembling hands shoves blocks of explosives into it. The fuse is short, Herr Lieutenant. We have 2 minutes. Enough to run away. Light it. They run away from the machine, stumbling over potholes. The explosion is dull, womb-like. It happens inside. 200 millimeters of armor dampen the shockwave, preventing it from bursting out. Inside the hull, pressure of thousands of atmospheres forms. The breech of the gun turns into shrapnel, grinding optics, the radio station, control instruments. A cloud of black smoke bursts out through open hatches. Outwardly, the machine remains intact, but inside it is gutted. It is an empty shell, a steel coffin from which the soul has been expelled. The road of retreat is strewn with such carcasses. Russian trophy teams that will follow will find dozens of seemingly absolutely intact Ferdinands. Without penetrations, simply abandoned, simply broken down, simply out of gasoline. This is a graveyard of ambitions. Here lies the belief that technology is more important than logistics, that one supertank can fight without a rear. German Oberleutnant Knirem looks at the map. Still 40 kilometers to his own lines. On foot. Through mud. Chaos is all around. Somewhere nearby, the clanking of T-34 tracks is heard. Russian tanks, simple, crude, with loose tracks, are moving forward. They don't break, and if they break, they are fixed with a blow of a sledgehammer and a curse word. And his technological masterpiece stands in the ditch, turned into a pile of useless metal by its own crew. Damned weight, whispers the mechanic, looking at the burning hulk. It is too heavy for this land. This land does not accept it. Stow the philosophy, the commander snaps. Take the machine gun. Now we are infantry. The transformation of the elite of tank troops into ordinary infantry happens instantly. Having taken off their headsets and taken carbines in their hands, they become vulnerable pieces of flesh. Armor no longer protects. The illusion of safety that 200 millimeters of steel provided has vanished. The logistical nightmare becomes reality. Retreat shows the true price of complexity. Every complex part is a risk. Every ton of excess weight is a sentence. The German army loses not just equipment, it loses tempo. It loses faith in its weapons. Soldiers passing by Ferdinands blown up by their own crews avert their eyes. This demoralizes more than the sight of a knocked-out tank. A knocked-out tank is an honest death in battle. A tank blown up by its own crew is a symbol of impotence, a symbol that the system has failed. The rain intensifies, washing soot off the armor of the dead giants. Water floods the engine compartments, mixing with oil and ash. The unique electric transmission, costing millions, rusts under the Russian sky. And the people who operated these machines trudge west, leaving behind the smoking ruins of their technical self-confidence. Ahead of them is the unknown and fear. Fear that thick armor previously stifled is now restrained by nothing. And this fear begins to penetrate souls, preparing the ground for the last, most terrible tragedy. The tragedy of a man trapped in a burning trap when technology finally betrays its creator. Internal space of self-propelled gun number 502. Cramped, stuffy, saturated with the smell of fear and processed oil. Here, behind 200mm armor, the world narrows to the size of a casemate. Gun Commander NCO Kurt Knierim looks at the breech of the gun. A week ago, at the parade before the offensive, this steel seemed to him a guarantor of immortality. He stroked the cold metal and believed he was sitting in the safest spot in Europe. Now he understands. This is not a fortress. This is death row. Ventilation cannot cope. Electric motors located in the stern heat up so much that boot soles begin to melt. The air is thick, heavy. Cordite suspension hangs in it after shots. Every breath is taken with difficulty. The crew of 6 is locked in a volume of a few cubic meters. Their faces are black with soot, eyes inflamed. The euphoria of the first days, when they shot Russian tanks from 2 kilometers, has vanished without a trace. Only animal trembling and the expectation of the end remain. Outside is a roar. Another Soviet shell ricochets off the frontal plate. The sound of the impact inside is perceived as the strike of a bell in which you are the tongue. Ears pop. Vibration passes through bones. "They are coming closer!" the loader screams. His hands shake as he tries to chamber a shell. "I don't see the infantry. Where is our cover?" "Shut up and work," barks Knierim, although he himself barely holds back panic. He presses against the periscope. The view is disgusting. Narrow slits of triplexes give only a fragmentary picture of the hell outside. The Ferdinand is blind. To the left and right are dead zones. Russian infantry knows this. They crawl on the ground, pressing against the grass, disappearing from the field of view of optics. Knierim sees a shadow darting toward the stern. "Infantry behind!" he yells. "Turn fans to reverse!" But too late. A dull thud against the engine grill, the sound of breaking glass, and immediately, a roar. It is not the roar of a motor. It is the roar of flames. A bottle of incendiary mixture, the simplest weapon of the proletariat against the pinnacle of engineering thought. Flammable liquid flows down onto the red-hot cylinder blocks of the Maybachs. Flash. The fire suppression system should activate automatically. Temperature sensors should send a signal, and cylinders with methyl bromide should flood the compartment with foam. Should. Knierim looks at the control lamp. It is not lit. Electronics failed. The complex network of wires entangling the machine is cut somewhere by a fragment or just burned out from overload. "Fire!"
shouts the driver mechanic.
Fire is coming into the casemate!
Smoke begins to seep through the bulkhead. Acrid, black, oily smoke from burning oil and rubber. It fills the fighting compartment instantly. There is nothing to breathe. Men cough, covering their faces with sleeves.
Abandon the machine! Commands Knirim. Everyone out!
This is the last order that makes sense. The armor that protected them from shells has now become an enemy. It keeps the heat inside, turning the self-propelled gun into an oven. The temperature rises in jumps. The loader rushes to the rear hatch. It is a round hatch in the rear armor plate of the casemate. It is heavy, massive. It is intended for loading ammunition and evacuation. The guy pulls the lever of the locking mechanism. The lever does not yield.
Jammed!
He squeals.
Help!
Knirim rushes to him. Together they lean on the steel handle. Muscles crack from strain. But the mechanism is dead. Probably, a close explosion of a high-explosive shell deformed the rear sheet by a fraction of a millimeter. That is enough. Precision German fitting of parts played a cruel joke. Where a Russian tank has gaps a finger thick and the hatch opens with a kick of a boot, here is perfect geometry, which with the slightest distortion becomes a trap. "Crowbar, give me a crowbar," wheezes the non-commissioned officer. The smoke becomes denser. Visibility drops to 0. Eyes water. Someone from the crew is already lying on the floor, suffocating. The radio operator tries to open his hatch in the front part of the hull, but the path to it is cut off by a wall of fire from the engine compartment. They are in a trap. 70 tons of steel press on the psyche harder than on the ground. Realization comes instantly and terribly. Their lives have been exchanged for nothing. This machine costs millions of Reichsmarks, but it has no emergency exit that would work flawlessly. Designers and warm officers thought about ballistics, but did not think about how a crew dies. Knirim beats his fist against the armor. Senseless. 200 millimeters of indifference. Outside, no one will hear. Outside, a battle is going on. Their own are retreating, strangers are advancing. And they are here, in a hermetic steel crypt, alone with chemical fire. Fear grows into quiet horror. This is not a heroic death in a firefight. This is suffocation. This is the death of a rat in a jar. "Mom," whispers the young gunner, sliding down the wall. He is only 19. He was the pride of the family, a tanker of an elite unit. Now he is just a unit burning in the accounting ledger of war. Flames burst into the fighting compartment. The heat becomes unbearable. Paint on the inner walls begins to bubble. Knirim looks at his hands. They are black. He understands that this is the end. All the power of the Third Reich, all this industrial machine, all these talks about superweapons, all this is a lie. Reality is this jammed lever. A cannon of the enemy did not kill them. The complexity of their own machine killed them. Ambitions of those who decided that technology could replace common sense killed them. He takes out a pistol. The Walther seems like a toy against the background of this steel hulk. There are 7 cartridges in the magazine. The crew is 6 people. The arithmetic of despair. "Forgive me, guys," he croaks. But the shot is not heard behind the roar of fire. Outside, the Ferdinand looks formidable and impregnable. Its armor still gleams under the drizzling rain. It stands in the middle of the field like a monument. No one sees that a drama is taking place inside. No one sees how the invulnerable machine devours its creators. A thin stream of smoke escapes through the ventilation mushrooms on the roof. This is the only sign that life inside the steel giant has ended. The psychological breakdown is complete. Faith in technology burned earlier than the people. Only ash and cooling metal remain, which will soon be covered with rust, becoming part of the Russian landscape. The story of Kurt Knierim's crew ended not with a victorious march, but with a silent scream behind thick armor that turned out to be too good to let them out. August 1943. The Battle of the Kursk Bulge is over. The smoke from burning oil storage tanks has dissipated, revealing a panorama that will become the main lesson of the Second World War. The fields to the north of Oriel resemble a junkyard of cyclopean scale. Here, among craters and burnt wheat, dozens of steel colossi are frozen. 89 machines went to the start of this arms race. By the end of the operation, fewer than 10 remained in the ranks. 95% of the composition of the 653rd and 654th battalions is lost. This is not just a military defeat. This is the total destruction of an elite unit. But the most terrible thing for the German command is not the number of losses, but their nature. Commissions wandering among the hulks record a paradoxical fact. Most Ferdinands do not have through penetrations. Their frontal armor, that very pride of designer Porsche, fulfilled its task 100%. It remained virginally clean. But the machines themselves are dead. They stand with torn tracks, with burnt-out engine compartments, with guns blown up from the inside. This graveyard is a monument to a strategic error. Germany tried to win the war by creating the perfect sword. The Soviet Union won by creating a reliable shield and a massive hammer. The Ferdinand was a masterpiece of engineering, but war is not an exhibition of achievements. War is mud, lack of spare parts, bad fuel, and command errors. And in this environment, a masterpiece does not survive. Consumer goods survive. The story of the Ferdinands on the Kursk Bulge puts a period in the dispute of two doctrines. The German doctrine of qualitative superiority suffered a collapse. The idea that one supertank costing 300,000 Reichsmarks can replace a battery of field guns and a company of infantry turned out to be a utopia. The economy of war works differently. The complexity of a system reduces its reliability in geometric progression. The more parts, the higher the chance of failure. The Ferdinand was too complex to live. Soviet strategy turned out to be more cynical and wiser. The bet on total mining, on saturating defense with cheap anti-tank means, on mass production of simple T-34 tanks, this was a choice in favor of reality. Soviet engineers understood the main thing. An ideal weapon does not exist. There exists a weapon that performs the task here and now. While German mechanics cried over burnt Siemens generators, Soviet factories were already turning out new thousands of tanks. Rough, with uneven weld seams, with cramped turrets. But these tanks started in the frost, were fixed with a blow of a hammer, and went to Berlin. And the technological miracles of the Reich remained rusting in the Russian steppes. The experience of Kursk changed tank building forever. Even the Germans were forced to admit the dead-end nature of the path of super-heavy and super-complex machines. The surviving Ferdinands were recalled to the rear, modernized, they were finally given machine guns, and renamed elephants. But they never played a decisive role again. Their time went away in those July days when the first wooden TMDB mine tore the track under number 501. Today, looking at archival photos of these monsters, we see not power, but the tragedy of engineering selfishness.
Ferdinand Porsche created a machine for himself, to prove the superiority of his genius. Soviet designers created machines for soldiers, to win the war. The rusty echo of that battle sounds simple. In a global confrontation, the winner is not the one who can create the unique, but the one who can replicate the reliable. The Soviet strategy of the industrial assembly line of death ground up the German bet on the Wunderwaffe. It was the triumph of logic and common sense over technical pride. The fields near Ponyri, strewn with thousands of tons of German metal, became visual proof that war is won not in design bureaus, where they draw ideal lines, but in workshops where they meet the plan, and on fields where simplicity and mass scale break the back of any, even the most perfect complexity. Silence descends on the steppe. The wind walks in the empty embrasures of turrets where the best guns of the Wehrmacht once stood. Now it is just scrap metal. Expensive, high-quality alloyed scrap metal that lost the war to a wooden box with TNT. This was a cruel but fair lesson of history, and this lesson was learned at the cost of thousands of lives and millions of Reichsmarks thrown to the wind of ambition.